Okay guys, so we're back today going over ProPresenter. I know we've been using it for a little while now. This is ProPresenter 7, more commonly just called ProPresenter. I know on the computer it's just called ProPresenter now, there's no 7. I know ProPresenter 6 had the little 6 logo, it's not there anymore, it's just 7, it's a little orange logo. You can see down here. I'm going to go over the basics today, and I'm going to talk about, I'm going to try and start off with just the basics first, and talk about more advanced things as the video goes on, and then hopefully it'll be broken out with timestamps on YouTube so you can go where you need to go. The biggest thing, hopefully today, is just help everybody to flow to see like how we're doing stuff, the processes. I've tried to make sure that we're using the same kind of process in ProPresenter in almost every room, and how we arrange the songs, the macros we're using, the labeling of things we're using, just trying to keep things in a clean workflow for everybody. So today I'm going to try and go over all of that and get everybody up to speed. Okay, so now we're going to talk about basically the left half of the screen. You'll see that it's got the library label, playlist label, it's got your playlist layout down here, it's got a little filter thing at the bottom. So at the top you're going to see library and playlist. Library is where everything's kept, so if you clicked on an each room might have a slightly different label. If it's ProPresenter 7, ProPresenter 6, slides and songs, something like that. It's pretty much where everything's going to be stored, like where all your songs, like everything will be basically stored in that. You probably won't really use library. There's not really a need to for most volunteer situations. Really where we're going to live is in the playlist. Every room is a little different, so some venues we use a lot for outside events. Some rooms we use for just mainly in-house events, so like Bearden doesn't really have a lot of outside events yet, so their playlist section is pretty much just the weekend playlist. I know rooms like Blend have like a whole bunch of folders, just because there's BSF, there's a couple life groups, and other stuff that goes on, Grief Share, all of that meets in there, so it has a lot of folders for each of those groups. So under playlist you'll see folders, typically that are labeled pretty well. Here in live we've got ones for events, that's for outside events. For playlist we made it in, there's the well, and then weekend services. For most events you're going to want weekend services, and it should have the playlist with the correct date on it. Sometimes it might not if it slips our mind, but it should be whatever it's going to be for that weekend should be on the only playlist in there. There shouldn't be multiple. I've tried to get rid of having multiple playlists just because it was kind of confusing, and we never were going back and using old ones. There was just no point to. So I'm trying to keep it as clean as possible, just so it's easy, people know which one, and people aren't getting freaked out if they're on the wrong one on accident, which is easy to do. So that's the left column at the top. And then you see when you've clicked on a playlist, so we'll go like the well. You can see it's set up with the well's pretty much just got its, well, if it'll load, it's got the well logos, which is basically just for walk-in. It's got its countdown section, and it's got all the music. And you can click through those, but we'll jump to weekend. So this is from this past weekend, February 13th, and as you can see, a new thing about ProPresenter 7 is we have headers. So I'm trying to build out the playlist now a lot more like the Planning Center sheet, so you actually have headers for each section, and then you have those items in each section. So like a typical Sunday, you're going to have like a walk-in slides, which are looping before the countdown. You have your countdown section, which has got your countdown. In most of our venues, it's also where the welcome video can be found. Because here at Harrison Lane, the welcome video will play right after the countdown video. I know at Bearden and Roanoke County that can differ sometimes. That's where we'll find those. Then we have our worship section, which has got a couple songs. Every room's going to have that. Then you've got your message. Everybody gets the same message set up. The only difference is only live will have the bumper loaded in. All the other rooms should not have the bumper because the bumper will come to you via Resi. And then you'll have your response, which is usually going to have a song. And then the walkout one is in most rooms. This is pretty much just a place to drop slides that if leadership or campus pastor or whatever says, hey, I want to really make a point about this certain topic or slide, event, or whatever at the end of a service, it'll usually be in walkout. That way, when people walk out the door, you can just leave that slide up. We don't always use it. A lot of weekends we actually don't use it. It's not a big deal. It's just to help. I know most venues are all pretty much this exact same setup on the left. The biggest difference is Blend will typically have a few more spots because their lights are triggered in ProPresenter, so it needs a little bit more detailed out sections to keep up for the lights. Other than that, it's pretty much the exact same layout, just a little more detail. Down here at the bottom, you actually have a filter, so you can type out stuff for songs, whatever. It's kind of helpful for our situation. You probably won't ever need it. Another thing about the left side is, so you've seen library. You can take stuff from the library. So we'll say all glory be to Christ. I want to drop it in this weekend playlist. I can just grab it, drop it in. It'll drop it in the last thing, and then I can drag to where it needs to go. Say I want a quicker way to drop a song in. I'm going to go up here to the top left, and there's a little search icon. If you click on the letters, nothing happens. But if you click on the actual magnifying glass, you'll get this little window pop up, and it's got these 3 little buttons here in the middle. We don't use the multi-tracks one. We don't have a login for it yet. But there's this one on the left is ProPresenter's logo. That means if you're on here, this is one you want to use for the most time because it means this logo is for stuff that's already loaded in the ProPresenter. The middle one is Song Select. That's how we import new music in. So that would be something that's not already in ProPresenter. So if you can't find it in the ProPresenter logo, you can go to Song Select and import a new song. But you shouldn't have to do that. So for the ProPresenter, you can go over here and you could just type in, we'll say Amazing Grace. And you'll see Amazing Grace is there. You can click on it and it'll give you like a preview with lyrics. And you can either hit add to playlist, or you can see down here there's a little like command prompt. You can actually hit command return and it'll add it to the playlist. And it'll add it to underneath wherever you've clicked. So I had Resurrender selected, so it added it. Actually, sorry, I Surrender All had been selected, so it added it just below it. So that's another way to add stuff if you need to. That little search icon is helpful. It's really helpful too if there's multiple versions of a song that it gives you the lyrics, because then you can ask the worship leader like, hey, what's the lines of the chorus? And if they can at least remember them off the top of their head, you can know, okay, I got the right song. So that's how I use the search tool. Don't worry about text or themes. You shouldn't have to worry about those. So now we're going to talk about how to edit slides, arrange them, really more so for lyrics. So we're on Praise the King, and you can see it's got primary selected already, but if you want to change the arrangement of the song, you can go up here to the right. There's this little icon, it looks like it has 2 half arrows and 3 squares, and if you hover over, it'll say arrangements. Click that, and this will bring up your arrangement section. So this is where you can select which arrangement, which for our case, it's almost always going to be primary or the name of your venue. And then if you want to move things around, this is where you can do it. Or you can add like another verse, you can add another ending, you can drag in like blank slides. That's where you're going to find your arrangements. It's very helpful. I know the worship leaders sometimes, and especially certain different venues, might on the fly be like, hey, we're going to add another chorus here, whatever. This is where you would come to do that. Now, if you need to do like a quick edit or you catch a typo in a slide, there's several ways to do it. First way, right-click the slide. You can hit Quick Edit, which will allow you to just add quick changes to things. You can even like highlight stuff and right-click it, and you could change your font to like bold, or take it away. You can underline things. You can make uppercase, lowercase. You can do all sorts of other things too, other than just typing it in. I just learned this feature a very short while ago. So you can do a lot with the quick edit. But say you need something where you want a little more in detail, or you want the screen to get bigger, you can go up here. So click the side you want to edit, and then go up here and hit the edit button. And now you can see I get a whole lot more tools over here on the right for like text. This build tab is pretty much if you're going to want the slide to animate in, out. So for like next steps, sometimes they'll like animate in. That's where I do that, is at the build. The shape is The shape tab is for the actual boxes on the slide. So like I just dragged and moved the text box around. That is done by the shape. And that will also affect like if there's a picture or like actual physical shapes on the screen. That's how you would change those. There's a text tab. And really if you're going to go in the edit, it's usually because you're going into the text tab because you need to do something special because the fonts or whatever, you need to do something that's not working right, and it's easier to go into edit. Like I know sometimes I have to go and change the spacing of the letters, and the only way to really do that easily is to just go to the edit tab, and then I can change character spacing. Like I can make them go wider or closer. Typically I'm only using that for message slides. But that's a quick couple ways to edit and change slides. Now, one thing to note is if you need to change the theme, so sometimes you might import a new song or use a really old song and you're like, it doesn't look the same as the other songs. Well, what you can do, and every room should have what's known, we'll show you, their own titled theme. So if you click in the song somewhere and hit Command A, that'll select all your slides. Then you're going to right click and come down here to themes. A lot of y'all already know this, but so like in live, we always use the 2RC lyric standard, which will put the lyrics in the middle. We used to use, so like if we wanted to change it to lower third, we have a 2RC lower third. This is just in live. Most of the rooms have like a 2RC like blend standard, 2RC like row standard or worship standard. You'll usually notice because it has some kind of 2RC language to it versus like just this typical ProPresenter language to it. But in this room, we almost always use standard, or you could always select like lower third. It usually will take a second, but it'll apply, and you see it changed everything to lower thirds. But we'll put it back to according to theme. For like right clicking, we'll go to lyric standard and apply. And then as you can see, it puts it back to what we want. So that's how you apply a theme. If everything's looking kind of different and you're like, hey, I need it to look the same, that's a quick way to do that. So say you're on sermon slides and you're moving stuff around. One thing to note is when you copy text from something and you go to paste it, say, I'll come down here for a quick example, quick edit. So I just copied this big, bold text font up here, but I want to paste it in here on the scripture, but I don't want it to keep that same thing. I can hit this paste and match style, and it'll change from that big, bold font to the font that the scripture was in. So that works really well if you're copying, say your pastor goes, hey, our venue host goes, I want to use the scripture, and you have a scripture slide in there, but you want to keep the same formatting. But every time you hit paste, it pastes like really tiny font or different looking font. Hit that paste and match style, and it'll match whatever you just copied to the style in the slide already built. That can be super helpful. That's how I actually build all scripture slides and all of Dave's, Mark's, Nichols, like Boobar slides for their sermons, is using that paste and match style feature. Very helpful. Now we're going to move over here to the right column. So on the right side, at the top, you'll see we have this box. It's kind of like our preview window. This is where you see your different screens. So right now we have our stage display screen, which is also the screen that the singers see. So you can see we've got a timer over here. We've got just the actual clock on it. I think only Harrison Lane is the only one I put the normal clock, but everybody should have a countdown. It's actually on the sermon queue right now, so that's why if I click a slide, it's got the countdown timer, which of course has been running since Sunday, hence why it's on a ludicrous number right now. But the stage display, I know some people, certain users, like I like to personally see stage display just because I can't see it otherwise, and I like to know if the singers are able to see their lyrics properly, because I know that's probably the most consistent problem with stage display. But you can also come down here to this little title. It's always labeled at the bottom, and you can actually change. So like in our room in here, we have multiple outputs. So we have the main screen and the lower third screen. Right now it's on lower third. So you can see that I clicked this main slide right here, and as you can see over on the screen, it put it on the bottom, like a lower third. And that's for online, but normally everybody will just have like their second to screen or full screen, and this is what you can see, what you're actually going to see on the slides in the room, which is very helpful. Another thing to note is you have all these little tabs over here on the right. Don't worry about these. These are just clear buttons that you can click to clear out different things. The biggest thing to note is this huge one that pops up now on the left with the big X that turns all red. That's your clear all. So if you want to clean everything off the screen very quickly, use that clear all button and it'll get rid of it immediately. I'll show, let's see if we have something with some more layers to it. I don't know if I have anything in this machine that has a lot of layers. But you can see it's highlighted. There's a text box, which on this slide, it's blank already. So if I were to click it, nothing changed. It just cleared all the text boxes. And then it's got an image tab that pops up. So, or media, I can clear that, which will clear, or as before, I hit the clear all tab, it's all gone. That's all these are for, is basically just clearing different layers or all of the layers. If you're watching a video, and this is definitely what's different from ProPresenter 7 to 6. Say if I'm rolling the bumper and I want to scrub, I can grab the scrubber down here. It's a little bit lower than what you expect it to be, and you can scrub the video that way. You can pause down here. You can rewind by 15 seconds, which is kind of nice. Or my favorite feature that they've added. So let's go to countdown because our bumper's not quite long enough. So say your worship leader in a run through goes, I want the last 30 seconds. You can actually click this -30 button here and it'll jump it to the last 30 seconds of your video, which is super helpful for rehearsal and stuff. We'll go ahead and pause it and then I'm going to clear it. Another thing to note too, you might have seen it just pop up. For your walk-in slides, they all have these go to next timers in the top. Well, this little tab, when you click something with a go to next timer, will pop up where it says advance. And you can see this little blue circle filling up, of course, over 8 seconds, which it's programmed to do. If you wanted to stop that timer, you actually could just click it, and now that slide's not going to advance to the next thing. Probably won't ever need that feature, it's just there. And then below that, you have these tabs down here. There's music, which we almost never use. There's a stage display, which that can be important. There's timers. There's a message one. We don't use messages. Then there's this props one. We almost never use that either. And then there's the macro. Every venue uses macros. And now I'm going to show why we use macros and what they're used for. Every venue pretty much has the same 3 macros. So everybody will have a sermon queue macro, they'll have a video queue macro, and a worship queue macro. And in certain rooms like live and blend will have more, just depending on if we're using macros to trigger other things in the room. So like blend, macros are also how the lights are triggered. In live, it's how we are triggering the multiple outputs for our online stream and then our in-house, like in the room slides. So at the top you see we have a sermon start queue, and it's got 3 little icons below it. This is the only room that's going to have the little mustache man. That is a theme change or looks, and that's pretty much just telling what the 2 different outputs are going to do. So that's deciding if online's getting a lower third or full screen or no graphic, and then if the room is getting full screen or no graphic. It's not that important to know. They're pretty much labeled how you need to know. Almost nobody's going to have to use or worry about using that little mustache man. There's this, what looks like a stamp on this queue as well, on the sermon queue. That is your stage display queue, and that queue is almost in every single macro in every venue. So that queue is how we're changing the stage display from like a worship look to a video look, which is going from like the 2 broken out boxes for the worship team to like a full screen to a it's like for a video queue. Say if I go to stage display up here, if I'm on slides and I click video queue, stage display turns into a full screen, just like what the actual screens are. If you hit the worship queue, it puts it to the 2 boxes that the worship team sees. And then if you're on sermon queue, it pulls up the timer down below, and then it has the full screen graphic above that. That's really the difference between the video and the sermon is very minimal. It's just adding that timer. And then the other cue that you'll see is this timer cue. It's on the sermon one. Now this can get a little tricky. The timers are kind of finicky. So if you want to edit a timer, you can come over here, but it's not going to change anything because we've already put it into a cue. So the best way to actually change the timer for like a sermon on the macro is to right click the macro, and you can hit edit actions, and you come down here to sermon, and it should have the checkbox on sermon. Click that, and it'll pop up this little window right here, and that's where you can come over and change your timer cue. So now, if I click it, it'll start at 33. So those are your macros, and they're very important, especially in Blend. That's how we're triggering the lights through MIDI. And what's cool about the macros is you can see that in the top left corner of each slide. And live, it's very important in the message. That's why there's so many little different color macros, because it's determining the lower thirds and full screen graphics of which ones go where at what time. It sounds a lot more complicated than it is. Every worship song should have one, the worship macro at the top, because that is what changes the stage display for the worship leaders to be able to read the lyrics correctly. I know the walk-in or videos, they'll have the video cues on almost all of them. But if you see something without it, the way to add a macro, so actually we'll do this, I'll remove worship macro. So like say I did this video cue, countdown's going, my stage display you see is a full screen video, and then I come down here, we're clearing, we're going into slides, but I'm only getting just the slide, full screen slide, and the worship team's going, hey, I don't have my, the lyric, the stage display is wrong. Well, I can take and drag that cue and put on that first slide, and now when I click, it changes it to the proper look. Another thing you can do is actually just click the cues over here, and it'll actually trigger those macros as well, which is super helpful. So those are your macros, which are the biggest thing to know about this tab. I really wouldn't worry about the rest of these because you should have macros that trigger what you need from the rest of these tabs.